Welcome back to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, the sexiest voice in triathlon, James Bell. Welcome back to the podcast, mate.
Here we are, mate. Another week, another day, another dollar, eh? On we go. It's hot over here, bro. Straight into the weather. It's really hot over here.
I've missed weather chat with James Bell. It's always one of my least favorite parts of the podcast.
How's things over there? You're still a bit under the weather, right?
It's just cold, mate. Fucking winter bullshit here. At least it stopped raining. It had rained and rained and rained. At least it's just cold and shit now. And the problem is it's rained for so long that whenever I go running, half of the path is still covered in water. So you're running, you got your nice running shoes on and everything. You're just splashing through muddy puddles and everything. And for me, I'm a bit of a peacock, James. So I don't like that, like my pretty shoes get covered in shit. So I have to put them in the washing machine. It's a whole thing, mate. But
did not to put your running shoes in the washing machine, mate. That
really?
will bend you. That bends the thing in them.
The thing? What's the thing?
Yeah, because they get too hot and then they go out of shape.
I know. I don't put them in the washing machine. I put them in to be washed, and by washed I mean they go in a bucket and then they come out clean. So that's.
Oh, okay. Sorry, when you say washing machine, I thought you were putting them in the washing machine on a 90-degree cycle.
They could do. I don't know, mate. I have this magical washing machine situation where I put my shoes in the laundry in the bucket and they're clean like a couple of days later. So I must have like elves or something to work in my house.
Dear. And don't clean your own running shoes. That's bad jazz, man. That is bad jazz.
No, I do. I have a bucket that I soak them in. I take the soles out, I soak them, all that stuff, mate. I'm not a complete man child, just a little bit.
It's not your first.
But Jimbo,
rodeo, then.
Nobody cares about how I clean my running shoes. What they do care about is that this podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, the world's premier endurance sports community, created by four-time world champion Chris McCormack. James Bell, you've been with MX for longer than I can even remember. What's something you like about the MX Endurance community?
At the moment, it's the odd chat we have about the Tour de France is taking place. As you know, the Tour de France is taking place because you love the Tour de France.
Obviously, the biggest cycling fan in the world here.
Referencing that WhatsApp group you put together, it's good to have people on hand if there's something to comment on. I watched the stage yesterday where Tadej Pogačar exploded and lost a load of time. Very unprecedented and unexpected, but it was nice to have some people there to chew it over with,
I did. I woke up to like a lot of messages. I was like, oh, and my first thought was like, what's happened? And then I'm like, oh no, it's just Tour de France chats. I mean, like, yeah, it's a good. I actually think it's been one of the more successful of recent. We have a lot of people phasing out of Facebook and stuff. We've been trying to come up with alternative ways for people to engage with the community, and that WhatsApp group seems to be a good one. So,
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I keep it on mute because there are a lot of people in there, and it would just constantly be buzzing. But it's nice to be able to dip my toe in every now and again.
Mate, I have every social media channel imaginable on some. Like all notifications are off. Everything possible is on mute.
Notifications are off. I'm not interested.
I want nothing popping up on my phone.
I'm not interested in what some aunt somewhere might be posting on Facebook at any particular point.
Of course, if any of the athletes that I coach get in touch with me, I have special permissions for them, so I'm always able to communicate with my athletes. No, it's like I'm all about having that phone thing. I don't know. I'm also like a bit OCD with my phone, where I don't like to have. I don't know about your phone, but I get all those like those symbols at the top of my phone that tells me there's like messages and I hate it. I want mine clean. I want it clear. They went through this phase in Australia. I don't know when the pandemic started, where they all wanted us to download this app, and it was meant to be, if you're in a proximity to somebody who's tested positive, it's meant to automatically tell you, hey, didn't work. But we had this stupid symbol that was up on my phone for like a year, and it pissed me off so long. As soon as they're like, oh, the app's dead, I was like, oh, thank God I can get rid of this stupid. So I was back to my nice minimalistic phone screen, I guess you call it. Man, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel if we're talking about phone screens.
We are a little bit, aren't we? We are a little bit. Should we start talking about the matter at hand in the world of endurance sport?
Mate, there's actually a lot to talk about this week. And the first article, mate, I saw this. It's from Triathlon today. And there's a fair bit more to it than what I've included here. And the main reason I wanted to include this here is because this is something that we covered last year, or it's sort of a continuation of a story, quite a serious story, in fact, that we covered last year. So this is, as I said, from Tim Morey, and it's several Swiss athletes do not wish to work with the new national coach, Jordi Muhlenberg. The arrival of Dutch triathlon coach Jordi Muhlenberg, who was presented at the end of May as the new national coach at Swiss Triathlon Federation, is not going entirely smoothly. Several Swiss athletes are familiar with the problems which occurred at the Dutch Triathlon Federation the past few years in which Muhlenberg played a role, and therefore they prefer not to work with him. Several Swiss athletes involved have told Triathlon Today that they have expressed their concerns to their federation, but that nothing is being done about it as of yet. The Dutch Triathlon Federation was discredited last year after the Dutch triathlon website triathlon.nl shared a publication, and sorry, triathlon is literally the number 3, then athlon.nl, shared a publication in which dozens of top athletes were spoken to, all of whom opened up about mismanagement, bullying, and poor coaching. While the investigations to the Dutch Federation are still ongoing, Director Rembert Groenman and Technical Director Artie Burke already left the Dutch Triathlon Federation a few months ago. Jordi Muhlenberg followed at the end of May and then joined the Swiss Federation. Inquiries with the Swiss Federation as to whether they are aware of the concerns their athletes have expressed about Muhlenberg prompted Managing Director Mattea Georgi to respond as follows. For our part, we do not wish to take sides on facts that may have happened but have not been clarified yet. There are no direct accusations against Jordi Muhlenberg known to us. Consequently, is that how you say it? Consequently. We do not rely on supposition or rumors, but only take on clear and established facts. Of course, we will immediately take an official position and consequent decisions if there are clear and established facts from official bodies. On top of it, in Switzerland, we have set up an independent structure, Swiss Sports Integrity, to which any athlete can turn in the event of complaints about violations of the ethics chart. So I guess you can probably tell, James, why I included this, but maybe I wanted to have a bit of a chat around this. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, we had insight into this when it was taking place at the time with the Dutch Federation, didn't we? We talked about it a lot. We discussed it, and we discussed it outside the podcast with a few of the key players as well. My thoughts on this, I mean, yeah, fair enough. Their statement that they will take an official position once there are clear established facts from official bodies. But if it were me, you are rolling the dice, aren't you? Taking on someone that is under this kind of scrutiny at this point, with this much baggage behind them and this many athletes saying from the Dutch side, this happened, and then from the Swiss side saying we don't want to work with him because they're saying this happened. Yes, innocent until proven guilty, but it's not looking great, and I would be wary of getting in bed with that guy for the minute, just because it's not a great look, is it? And also, you've got a duty of care to your athletes to keep them in a safe and supported environment.
What the first thing about it, and you touched on it then, that when you were speaking, it made me think of it a little bit, is the idea of if you've got your athletes, and again, I don't understand whether it's a small number, a large number, it's not a specific number mentioned in the article, but if the athletes in the Swiss Federation are saying, we don't want to work with this guy, maybe not the best start to this relationship. Maybe, I don't know, the Federation should have some sort of consultation with the athletes. I mean, again, some insight with some other athletes that we know. I know that they have a bit of a say in who the Federation decides to appoint, or they have the option of if they don't like that. Like, I just find this a bit, it seems a bit weird. And you're right. I mean, innocent until proven guilty, absolutely. But when there's enough people who are like, we don't want to work with this guy, and you said it right, the people who don't want to work with this guy, it's like, well, maybe don't work with this guy.
The coach athlete relationship is a very not special one, but a unique one, because it's not like you've just got a boss at work or an employee at work that you're working with. This has to be a very symbiotic thing to get the very best out of high performing athletes. And we know as age groupers, that you have to get on with your coach, because if you don't, then you're not going to listen to what they say, and it's going to be a degradation. Times that by 1,000,000 for the top pros, for people that are trying to get the very best at themselves to win the hardest competitions in their sports in the world. And then you've got athletes saying, we don't want to work with this coach. What's that going to do? Even if it's going to take 0.5% off their performance because of a subconscious level, they don't like the coaching they're getting, or there's a concern there. That 0.5% could be all the difference between a win or a loss on a very sort of unemotional level, like results driven thought.
You've touched on something, and I think it's a really good way for our audience. We know, I mean, I know we have plenty of pros who listen to this, but the majority of our listeners are amateurs. You're exactly right. I mean, we both coach athletes, and we both have also, had experiences with athletes that we coach where we've known it's not been a good fit, and those relationships don't last as long as the ones that do. Like, I've worked with some of my athletes for years and years and years now, and I've had athletes that I've worked with for a couple of weeks, and we've both gone, this ain't working.
Yeah,
that's just as a hobby. So for our listeners, think of this. If you don't like the person you work with as a hobby, you don't want to keep working them. Let's put you then in a situation where it's not just about the results; it's also about funding. It's about all the pressure that comes with. There is a lot more than getting a finisher medal for these guys. Like there's Olympic funding, there's sponsorship dollars, there's lots of moving parts. And if you have the person who's sort of going to be critical to that, I guess the pain point or the point that a lot of the pressures come into, and it's not working, I can't see a lot of good coming out of that. It's a
I mean in this situation, the guys come out of the Dutch Federation and all of that shitstorm that was following it, and the report and all the athletes, and it wasn't great. It really wasn't great, and it was looking damning. It wasn't isolated. It's like I don't know, you're at work and someone just goes, "Oh, you know what? Your new boss is arriving today. What's his name? Oh, Darth Vader." It's like, oh, brilliant. Thanks, mate.
Have you seen that? Made me think of the Darth Vader Death Star canteen skit.
Yeah.
Are you Jeff? Jeff who? Jeff Vader? No. No, you're exactly right. Like it's, and the other thing as well, which is worth considering for the national athletes, it's not like you can just go, I don't like this situation, I'm going to go race for another federation. I mean,
no.
If you're Richard Murray, I guess you kind of can. Just it takes a while, but yeah, it's not like for the athletes, the Swiss athletes. Let's look at now. They can't just go, well, I don't like this, I'm going to go race for another team. You can't do that. Yes, you can go out and get an external coach, but there's all the loss of federation support and all the other parts that come along with it. And it's a unique situation because for these guys, there is a lot of, it's not that they're being coerced. It's definitely not coercion. I don't want people to think I'm suggesting it is, but there's a lot on the line for them if they decide that they don't want to put themselves in a situation they don't want to be into. And it sort of does mean that athletes do have to shut up sometimes and just stay in situations that they don't want to and that can actually really negatively harm their mental health as well.
So. Yeah. And this isn't a case of us saying it has to be a softly, the coach has to be your best mate thing. It has to be someone you trust so that when you do have those difficult conversations and you do need, it's a two-way thing, but when you do need a bit of a poke and a bit of a, come on, you so that you've got that understanding that person is not doing it from a place of harm or, they're doing it from wanting to improve you. That relationship's critical. It's a difficult one because it can't be just matey. We're all friends here. It has to be one of real trust and reliance almost.
Well, again, I guess, and I know that Triathlon today, I think they're somewhat involved with, I think they're Belgian based or something, but I reckon that they'll probably continue to cover. And that is a place that I go to most weeks to try to find articles for the podcast. So as more comes up, I guess we'll continue covering it. So that's that one.
Yeah, man.
The next one, Jimbo. Sorry?
We will see, eh?
We will see. The next one is not probably a great surprise to anybody, but it is definitely disappointing. And this comes from 220 Triathlon. That is that Jonathan Brownlee is withdrawing from the 2022 Commonwealth Games. Now, James, for our non-Commonwealth listeners, would you like to explain to them what the Commonwealth Games are?
Oh, it's kind of like a mini Olympics, basically, where the Commonwealth nations all compete against each other.
It's like the most important. It's like the most important competition in the world, isn't it? It's much more important than the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is. The athletes hold it in regard. Those that compete, obviously, those that aren't Commonwealth nations won't give a shit. Probably, but it's. I mean,
the Americans aren't going to be glued to their television and watch.
No, I mean it's a very important. Having a Commonwealth medal. It's a big deal. It's a big thing.
It's a big deal,
and it's also a very important gauge as to where we are and who's firing and who's not for big competitions. Because coming out, it's always difficult to gauge week on week when people are racing in the WTCS or Superliga, who's actually peaking for what. But when it comes to these big competitions, everybody that is there is peaking for that competition. So it gives a real indication as to who's firing and who's not out of the people that do compete.
2018, it was Henry Schoeman who won the men's, and Who won the women's? Do you remember? I think it was Ashley Gentle.
Yeah, I'd
Is
like
that
to say
right?
that. I think that's correct.
Was it Ashley Gentle? I'm
I'm
disappointed.
right. Talk
I know
amongst
that
yourselves. I'll just double check.
Lauren Parker had the third place. That's where Lauren's incredible story, where she, within 12 months of losing the use of her legs, got the bronze medal in the wheelchair. And I'm pretty sure it was Henry because it was on the Gold Coast, and it was the same course or a similar course to the WTCS Grand Final that was also on the Gold Coast that year. Because I was at the Grand Final, but I wasn't at the Commonwealth Games. I'm extremely confident that Henry Schumann won it because I know he has a Commonwealth Games gold medal.
World Triathlon website says the 2018 Gold Coast Commonwealth Games elite women was Flora Duffy, Jessica Learmonth, Joanna Brown.
Flora Duffy. Well, there you go. I didn't even know that. Of course, Bermuda's a Commonwealth. I was completely wrong. That's cool. Flora Duffy, again. She's got the set, mate. She's got the Olympic gold. She's got the Commonwealth Games gold. I guess we'd have to ask her which one's...
Sorry, Ashley. We gave that to you for a moment and we whipped it away.
We did. There was a moment people like, oh, good on her. I mean, we know that Flora Duffy's greatest achievement is winning female triathlete of the year last year on the MX Endurance podcast. But
there you go.
Anyway, now that we've established what the Commonwealth Games are, following an injury sustained at World Triathlon Championship Series in Leeds, Jonny Brownlee has withdrawn from representing Team England at this summer's Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. Speaking of his current status, Jonny said, I'm desperately disappointed. I was very positive after my original diagnosis about being fit for Birmingham. My elbow is getting better by the day, but my wrist wasn't. The scan revealed I have a fractured scaphoid, and for the benefit of my long-term health, it needs to go in a cast. Shortly after the news was announced by British Triathlon, Jonny added more via his Instagram feed. I'm gutted to announce that I won't be racing the Com Games. I've been struggling with my wrist since my crash in Leeds, and a recent scan revealed the fracture. Home games don't come around very often, and I gave everything to be there and fit to race. After a month of suffering on the turbo, I ran out of time and luck. I will be supporting Team England all the way. I wish all the athletes the best of luck. Enjoy racing in front of an amazing home crowd. It's a massive honour. Another point worth making, James, is unlike the Olympics, where for some reason you guys are allowed to band together as one team, Team Great Britain. The Commonwealth Games, you don't. It's individual countries. So there's Team England, there's Team Scotland, there's Team Ireland. It's a little bit different, correct?
England, Scotland, Wales.
Wales.
Yeah, it's a real shame that Johnny's not going to be racing because, he's a bit of a talisman around here. Everybody knows Jonny Brownlee. I mean, I think Alistair and Jonny Brownlee are the only two triathletes that really are bigger than the sport.
Pierce the veil,
triathlon.
Mate. Pierce the veil. They are mainstream athletes.
They are mainstream athletes. They're names that everybody on the street would know, irrespective of being a triathlon fan, a triathlete or not. So not having him there representing Team England is a real shame. I think it was a bit of an ask, though. You break a bone.
He was never going to be there.
No. So I know that he said his elbow was healing, but he's now found a fracture in his wrist. But, even with a healing elbow, you're going to be missing training. You're going to be not on your top end. So not a surprise, if I'm honest, but, a shame nonetheless.
The bone that he broke in his wrist is the same bone that I broke in my wrist when I had my bike crash in 2020, and it's a nasty. It's not fun, and even once the bone's healed, then you've got all that you lose so much mobility from having to keep that wrist stable for so long. It was tough. I remember getting back in the pool, and my hand, like the whole wrist joint, like the fatigue and stuff I had after swimming, like my whole wrist, that chain of movement was so crook for like a month. It was not a quick, I'm better now, let's get going. It took me a long time
as
to
you
get
get older,
it,
injuries take longer, don't they? I mean, I'm still rehabbing a ankle from January. It's injuries take time, and if you don't do them properly, then they really do take time. They take even longer. So I would, if I was... Go ahead.
I was going to say, the Com Games are still going to have some positives, though. We're still going to have some great athletes there. I mean, we joke that it's like the... not the real games or whatever. But if you look at who's going to be there, there's still some, we're going to still have Hayden Wilde, we're going to have Alex here, we're going to have Tyler Mislachuk. In the women's, we're going to have Flora Duffy, Georgia Taylor Brown. There's big names racing still. Beth Potter
absolutely.
Will be there.
And
So
while we're on the Commonwealth Games, rather than doing the next story, I'll leap ahead to another story I put in the doc, which was from the BBC News, which is how to be at the Birmingham Commonwealth Games for free. With Birmingham less than 3 weeks away, the city's ready to welcome thousands.
So close, isn't it?
Fans. It is.
Oh,
It's
wow.
the The first time the competition has been held in England since 2002, when it was hosted by Manchester. First held in 1930, the Commonwealth Games originally featured just 11 countries and 400 athletes. This year, 6,600 athletes from 72 nations and territories will compete. The events are taking place all around the West Midlands, and many of them are free to attend. And then the point of this article is the triathlon is one of those. Thousands of fans will gather at one of Europe's largest urban parks to watch the men's and women's triathlon on Friday the 29th of July and the para-triathlon on Sunday the 31st of July. The start and finish points are ticketed, but the rest of the route is free for people to come and go as they please. Powell's Pool is the location for the swimming course, and Boldmore High Street will also see 4 laps of cycling in both events. It runs from 11 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 29th of July for the men's and women's, and the 31st of July for the para. So there are opportunities.
Where's
there.
the swim?
The Powell's Pool.
Is it in a pool?
No, it'll be in a lake. It'll just be a lot of our lakes are called pools.
Are they? Well, there you go. There you go, non-British listeners. You learn something new.
It probably because someone called Powell used to sit there years and years ago. I shit you not. I shit you not. Or he owns it, or it's on his land or something. You know, it's just something ridiculous like that. So yeah. Opportunity to go and watch. If you're in the UK, then there's scope to you don't even need a ticket for most of it. You can just go and give them a cheer and be part of the event.
Where's Birmingham?
It's about 2 hours north of Bristol.
And where's Bristol?
And Bristol's about 2 hours north of me.
Okay.
Birmingham's in the Midlands. In the Midlands, it's like the mid of the UK.
Okay, so sort of north,
England's second largest city.
of London.
Yes, sort of, yeah.
Okay, cool. Are you going to go to the Com Games?
No, I'm not. No.
Fair enough. Well, there you go, guys. If you are in the UK and you are keen to go watch it, I mean, if I was close, I'd probably go watch that because that's getting, like I said, there's going to be some great athletes. Why not get out there, scream at them as they go past? James, we're going to move into a new segment of the podcast, and it's probably only going to happen this week, but it's a one-off segment. We don't have a jingle for it. We don't have a fancy introduction to it. It's Triathlon Baby Corner because there's been some baby announcements this week.
I knew this was coming. I got to grin and bear this, haven't I? The non-triathlon related baby stuff. But all right, let's go.
I know. Let's do it. The first one comes from Jonathan Turner at Try247, and that is Lionel Sanders to become a father. No Limits shares the happy news. Lionel Sanders' latest YouTube video has a life-changing update. He's going to become a father. He and his wife Erin shared the happy news. They said, "We're beyond excited to announce that the team will be grown by one this fall. We think it's a boy," says Lionel on the video before Erin clarifies Lionel thinks it's a boy. "Quite nervous about it. I'm going to have to start get reading about it real soon," adds Sanders. Congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Erin and Lionel.
Congratulations from both of us. Great news. Obviously, plenty more to come. There's lots of excitement that happens when you have kids. So enjoy.
I'll have to take your word for that, Jimbo.
Yeah.
We're going to stay in baby corner, mate, because there's yet another baby piece of related news this week, and this comes from Tim Moria at Triathlon Today, and that is that none other than Katie Zafiras, the American athlete who has just won about everything there is to win, has given birth to her baby son, Kimball William Zafiras. Tommy Zafiras, best known as a photographer for World Triathlon, has thus become a father. This beautiful boy has finally arrived into our lives on the July 7th, 2022. Welcome to the world, Kimball William Zafiras. As one of the boy names we picked out, Tommy had made up Kimball in honor of my dad, who'd always wanted us to live our lives being humble and kind plus humble, and also William after my dad. Kimball's got a whole lot of him to love, and that's not even taking into account his personality that we can't wait to get to know. I love watching Tommy transform into a super dad and already knew how amazing he was going to be as a husband in this new role. We are so thankful for the team of doctors and nurses who took care of bringing Kimball into the world. Truly an amazing birth experience as a result of the most excellent team of people taking care of us.
Congratulations them as well.
Correct.
It's finally here, the moment they've been waiting for, and little baby Kimball exists. So, congratulations and all the best from us two at the MX Insurance Podcast. Baby Corner. And we're out.
And we're done. Let's move back to triathlon stuff, mate. Now, it was interesting because this next thing we're going to talk about, I think there's a bit to it, a little bit to it. And it was a post that I saw on social media that the PTO put out this week. There's a lot of PTO stuff this week that's not in the downline of the PTO. And I think that the PTO might have deleted the post. And I knew that I wanted to talk about it. And when I started, I wanted, it's like, okay, well, I'm not just going to say, hey, I think I saw something on Instagram. And so I Googled the topic. And an article came up. And I thought, I've not heard of this website. The website's called Enter to Run. So I started looking at, as you guys hear every week, we try to give, we recognize the source of the article. And who should be the author of this, but none other than John Levinson. So John Levinson's...
he gets about, doesn't he?
He gets about, mate.
Doesn't he? Bloody hell, John. I hope Try 24/7 know you're moonlighting a little bit under... at least use an alias, bro. Should you,
I know,
James
at least
Bale
a pen name. James Balin. Isn't there a character in a book who's named after you or something? What's his name?
Yeah, James Ballos.
James Ballos. Your fourth nickname. I'm going to start introducing you. James Ballos.
Big, mean, bold barbarian man who kills people. I'm up for it.
It's pretty much a fair representation of you, I think, mate.
I think so, yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, this article is called PTO World Rankings, record-breaking Ditlev and Langridge on the up. So I've cut out the main part, and that the latest PTO World Rankings have been released after a big weekend of races in Roth, Les Sables, Oloni, Andorra, and Vansbro. There were some notable changes and records broken, primarily off the back of a great day at Challenge Roth, which saw Magnus Ditlev and Annie Haug take impressive wins in Bavaria. Under the PTO's ranking system, the performance of Magnus Ditlev at Challenge Roth is rated as the single best full/iron distance performance of all time. That result sees Magnus jump from number 11 to number 4 in the rankings. It also perhaps adds further statistical backing to the post-race comments of second place Patrick Langer, who said of the Dane, "Nobody in the world would have beaten Magnus today. This is really the most insane performance in triathlon I have ever seen." That athletes are rewarded with an additional 10% bonus, note not reflected in the table above, or on their best full distance score of the 2022 season, also helps, of course, if you have just achieved the highest ever points total. Lang himself also made a notable rankings move, jumping from number 10 to number 2. His Roth 2022 score of 104.75 points was just shy of the 106.11 he was awarded for winning in 2021. Considering his early season crash and surgery, plenty of positives for the twice Ironman World Champion. Other athletes who have improved their top 20 status since we last updated our commentary are Dennis Chevrolet, Rudy von Berg, recent winners of Ironman Frankfurt, Ironman France, respectively. And then it was no surprise, of course, to see that Annie Haug and Fenella Langridge are now the top 20 movers of the week. A second consecutive Roth victory sees Haug leapfrog fellow German Laura Philipp to move from number 3 to number 2 in the rat standings, with the top 3 of Reef, Haug, and Philipp pretty close in points terms now. The British duo of Kat Matthews and Lucy Charles-Barclay are currently 4th and 5th. A significant rankings upgrade for Fenella Langridge, which has seen her move from number 23 to 11, with her Challenge Roth score of 107.9. So, Jimbo.
Quick clarification.
First of all,
quick clarification on the article, because it was rated as the single best full iron distance performance of all time, second behind Chrissy Wellington. So it was the best male full iron distance performance of all time, because Chrissy Wellington's is the one person that's got a higher points total on the women's side.
Interesting. I didn't actually see that. Now I saw this cause a lot of stir online. And that's what I think the post, I saw the PTO put up the post saying the greatest full distance performance of all time. And there was a lot of people jumping on being quite negative about it. And that's when I might have just not found it again. But I mean, firstly, absolutely incredible performance of Magnus. I was watching the sub 7 sub 8 broadcast today. They had a list of the fastest iron distance races in all time. And I think Magnus is number 4 or 5 ever on his second ever attempt at the distance, which is incredible. But yeah, I wanted to unpack that idea around you. Do you think that the PTO's ranking system is capable of awarding that title? Do you think it is a just title? What are your thoughts around that?
I don't think they're capable of awarding the single best full iron distance performance of all time title. Yep. I think they are very capable of awarding, within our ranking system, the highest point scoring male performance of all time based on these metrics. There you go. But there is a lot more that goes into the sentence, the single best full iron distance performance of all time, than simply collecting metrics that that give points for a race. So I think there's a difference there, because there's
100%.
context, there's where the race is, what the race means.
Exactly.
There's a lot more
battle,
that goes
the
into
story.
it. Yeah, the battle, the
Yeah.
story, the sort of the whole sort of melting pot of what makes you a pro athlete and what means success in that moment. So yeah, I think for this, awarding that result, that performance, which was truly amazing, the top points because of metric. Cool. Saying it's the
Yep.
single best full iron distance performance of all time? Yeah, maybe not. But I mean, they're
Yeah.
they're there to create conversations, and that's what they did. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm shockingly very much on the same page as you. I think it's 100% fair to say this is the highest point earning performance ever. But you're right. There's so much more that goes into a race. Like races, obviously, are about statistics, and it is about who's fastest across the line. There's so much more that goes into something than purely those numbers, those metrics, and things like that. And I mean, what I find probably a little bit challenging around this is that if you look at the ranking system the PTO has in place, which is something that I'm actually quite sick of talking about, to be honest. I'm sick of seeing the dialogue about the ranking system sucks. We get it. I know it's not anyway. They listen there, but yeah, I think if that is purely about a performance based on the conditions of the day, that's absolutely not the right way to start to factor the greatest performance of all time.
No.
You're right. You said it before.
And also for them, from their perspective, the PTO's perspective, for them to go to like, well, we've got these metrics and they govern the race, and then they get this highest performance of all time. If they sat there and went, can't award that as the best performance of all time because it's not really, and they said actually we've got to reduce the points, then that would be rubbish because they can't do that. Correct. They've set their metrics, so they've got to do it. So they did it. But then you, from our perspective as an audience and watching these performances, there are things that you could tweak that would then make us go, oh, maybe that is up there. For example, as a minor example, if Frodo hadn't pulled out and Magnus had raced shoulder to shoulder with him and beaten him at the end, you'd have gone up a notch in terms of
correct 100%.
Whether it's a bit closer to best full iron distance performance of time. So that's a very small example of how the context and the emotion and the battle makes a difference.
Factors outside of the statistics.
Yeah, towards that emotional sort of decision of whether it's the best performance of all time. So, I think there are two different things.
Another thing I didn't know, I wasn't even aware of until I saw the points come up for this. Do you know that they give a 10% boost to your best iron distance performance now?
I did not know that.
So if you look at, like I didn't either, because I last week we didn't do a download on the PTO. We couldn't really find anything worth talking about. And this literally came out like an hour, the typical curse of the podcast.
Yeah, it really did, didn't it? It was an hour after we published.
Yeah, and I remember looking it up, and because I was very curious to see. This is one of my favorite things about the PTO. I love looking at the way, like I wish they'd come out a bit sooner. I wish it was like every Tuesday after, like I wish there was a consistent bang. It comes out this time, rather than it seems to sort of fluctuate depending on the week. But I looked at Magnus's time. It was like 124 points. I was like, what? That can't be right. And then in brackets, it's like 10% bonus. And I thought, I have not heard of this. And I still don't know the reason. Is that they give a 10% points bonus for your best full distance performance of the year. And the only reason I can think, I mean, it's interesting considering there's already a lot of criticism around the ranking system. To suddenly go, like you sort of said before, we can start to change things. By the way, guys, we now have a 10% boost for your best iron distance race. If you're a 70.3 athlete, I don't know, is there the same boost for your best 70.3 performance? Is there the same for your...
I don't know. We need to get our ducks in a line before we speak on this, don't we, really? Because I've only just learned that it exists about 20 seconds ago.
But that's my point, though, James, is that we follow this stuff pretty closely, mate. We have a segment that we do every week called the Downline the PTO. And that's the first either of us had heard of it. Like that's what makes me go, this hasn't been communicated very effectively. Because we pay a lot of attention to this.
Yeah.
And it probably should have been.
Yeah, it should have been. We should have known that. But if it's a consistent thing, then a consistent thing. It's like having a set of scales that are off by 10%. As long as you know your scales are off by 10%, and every weigh-in you do, is 10% off, it gives you a line to see whether you're losing or gaining, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It's as long as it's consistent, as long as it's not just like athletes beginning with M get a 10% boost to their performances, athletes beginning with B do not.
I wonder, again, I'm purely speculating now, but I wonder if it is something to do with the fact that there's been a lot of talk that the PTO seems to favor middle and shorter distance races, with like all the PTO Tour events are middle distance. Like a lot of the stuff they do, a lot of the wild cards are always short course athletes. I'm purely speculating now. I don't know this, but I wonder if maybe that's a bit of a reaction to that, where the IronMan guys are like, hey, don't forget us. Like we're part of the PTO too.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, because Professional Triathletes Organization was always a long course focus.
Yeah. And you
so
get bonuses for their races. You get bonuses for doing the PTO events. So if you're a designated Ironman athlete, like I can't see Jan Frodeno doing too many of the PTO Tour events anymore.
No.
Maybe you'd be going, well,
Jan Frodeno is now ranked number 8 on the PTO rankings, mate. Eh?
I know. Well, that's what I was going to... Let's go through. So the rankings have changed a lot since the last time we looked at it. So number 1 is still Christian Blumenfeld, but gone up to number 2 is Patrick Lang. Gustav Wien has moved down to 3rd place. Magnus Ditlev has jumped 7 spots to number 4. Lionel Sanders has dropped 2 places to number 5. Braden Curry has dropped 2 places to 6. Daniel Beckergaard's dropped 2 places to 7. Jan Frodeno dropped 2 places to 8. Florian Angart 2 places to 9. And Matt Hansen 2 places to 10. On the women's side, Daniela Reef is still the number 1 ranked athlete with a massive 120-point average. That's humongous. Like compared to Christian with 111.39, considering that Christian did that 721 and the Ironman world title, like the point difference, it shows how dominant Daniela Reef is. Hey, so she's still in 1st place. Annie Haggs jumped 1 place to number 2. 3rd place, Laura Phillip. 4th place, Kat Matthews. 5th place, Lucy Charles Barclay. 6th place, Taylor Nibb. 7th, Sky Monge. 8th, Emma Pallant-Brown. 9th, Jeannie Metzler. And in 10th place, Paula Finlay. So
some changes, eh?
Some changes. Speaking of changes, mate, and speaking of races, there was an abundance of races over the weekend, and I thought we were going to get the action started in Hamburg with World Triathlon Championship Series Hamburg. We're going to start with the women's race. Our summaries come from John Levinson at Tri 24/7, or what was it? Before to Run or Eat to Run or whatever the other one was called. John Levinson, mate, I didn't know you were such a frequenter of other websites. I feel a little bit betrayed.
Do you think that other website has just copy and pasted an article from Tri 24/7 and credited John? Because Tri 24/7 did put out that article on Twitter, and pretty much they had to run a correction after it, saying it was the best male performance of all time because Chrissy Wellington's time was better. So that's I think they might have just gone
almost like we do on the podcast. People
exactly.
think that
John gets about, mate, because people like us steal him. Does John Levinson even exist? Is he real, or is he just a name?
He's your 5th nickname.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Hamburg. Flora Duffy collected a penalty in T1, delivered perhaps the worst T2 of her career, and still claimed a 13th win in Hamburg on Saturday. In the swim, which was wetsuit free, Rappaport, Lopez, and Sean Rainsley were the first up the exit ramp, with Duffy 7 seconds back in 7th. 7 seconds back in 7th is a difficult little sentence. 7 seconds. What was it again? 7 seconds back in 7th.
Oh, that is hard. My brain just absolutely bailed on me midway through that sentence.
7 seconds back in 7th. Say that 3 times quickly. Winner here in 2017, Duffy was to the fore very early on the bike, looking to force a breakaway. Initially part of the group, 8 athletes, not including Beth Potter, was showing promise. It didn't last, however, and with the chase group benefiting from the cycle strengths of Leeds 2021 winner Maya Kingma, by the midpoint of the ride, we had a leading group of 15 more than 30 seconds clear. Biggest news, however, was that Duffy would get a 10-second penalty to serve on the run course for a T1 infringement, swim goggles left outside of the transition box. With just 5 kilometres of running and Potter and Lindemann in the group, among others, that could be very significant. Kingma was the first of the 15 athletes in a T2, and Duffy, again, was having a bit of a shocker. The final athlete from that group out onto the run course, which was highly unusual. As the run settled in, the first kilometre, it was Arena Games Singapore winner Bragg Meyer leading the way. Despite her nightmare, Duffy leapfrogged from 15th to 1st, with Beth Potter just a couple of seconds down, with Duffy surely trying to gain the required advantage over the Brit in order to overcome that 10-second penalty. Duffy took the penalty at just at the end of lap 1, and that meant that Potter would start the final lap of 2.5 kilometres with a 6-second advantage over Duffy. She reduced the gap through the second lap, closing on the Brit with the finish line approaching fast. Duffy closed the gap, went straight past, but would be well aware of a track background of the British athlete and pushed on. But Potter couldn't fight back, and if we didn't know it already, Duffy showed once again that she is without question one of the all-time greats of this sport, with her 13th WTCS win. Asked afterwards if it was one of the most satisfying, she said, "Yeah, for sure. I gave everything out there and am super pumped to take a win after this year. It started off so weird with 2 times COVID, flying to races, and my equipment not making it. I'm pumped to get myself back in the series and excited for the rest of the year." So the results from Hamburg, which was a sprint distance race: first place, Flora Duffy, 58.37. Second place, Beth Pod, 58.43. Third place, Lisa Tersch, 58.53. Fourth place, Taylor Spivey, 58.58. And in fifth place, Laura Lindemann, 59 minutes flat. Jimbo.
Duffy's pretty good at this triathlon, Lark, isn't she?
God, she's good, mate. She's Commonwealth Games, 2018 Commonwealth Games gold medalist. I don't know if you knew that, James,
absolutely.
But I do
now. And gold medalist. And, she's going to be winning 70.3s, and she's just really, really good. And it almost to another level. Do you know what I mean? There's the races that she's in and the races she's not in. And that's kind of how I see the sport at the moment. It's
like with Alexi in the men's.
Yeah, a little bit. It's. I mean, we talked about Katie Zaviras earlier, who's just had a baby. Yeah. I'd like to see a really informed Katie taking on this version of Flora Duffy at the moment and see where that shook out. I'm not sure.
We didn't see it at the Olympics, though.
Yeah, we did, but we didn't. I mean, Katie wasn't.
Yeah, she
was coming back. Well, she was coming back rather than firing at optimum.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, Flora Duffy just seems to be unbeatable. When you're running,
it's interesting though.
Yeah,
Georgia Taylor Brown has beaten her a few times this year, though. Like this is the thing I keep noticing this year with the results is that you have again, you look at the men's race, which we're going to get to. There's a winner and wins really well, and we're not surprised to win. And we're talking about how great they're going this year. You can tell I'm trying to keep a little element of surprise for the people who don't know the result. But then there's a person missing. I find this year really odd in the sense that you're right. I look at Flora Duffy and I'm like, she is incredible.
Yeah. And then you look at the World Championship standings and Georgia Taylor Brown is leading.
Quite significantly as well. Yeah. This is what I mean. Like, Georgia Taylor Brown is, I just want to see these two. This is what we talk about a lot with long course racing. I want to see Georgia Taylor Brown and Flora Duffy. And I love the fact that we're talking about the gold and silver medalist from the Olympics that are having this rivalry. And it's really starting to come down to the wire a little bit too.
It'll come to blows at the Commonwealth Games, won't it?
Hopefully. Mate, this is what I mean. This is why the Commonwealth Games is exciting to me, is because we're going to get to see.
And that's what I mean. It's where you get to see these athletes all peaking together. The ones that are going to be there are going to be all firing for that event because it means a lot. A Commonwealth Games medal means more than a WTCS win.
I mean, it is interesting. I don't know. There's a few names that aren't on this list, to be honest. I mean, I don't know whether they were there, they weren't there. I don't have Cassandra Beaugrand. I don't know if she was there. I haven't watched this race yet.
Beaugrand wasn't at the race.
It's interesting, hey, because to me they're the three at the moment. It's Beaugrand, Georgia Taylor Brown, and Flora Duffy, and I just want to see some good three-way battles between those three. I think it's red hot.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so there you go. Flora Duffy, again. It is also worth just remembering. Beth Potter is the fastest ever road 5K runner, female runner ever.
Yes,
ever. And Flora Duffy ran her down, took a 10-second penalty, and then ran her down again and beat her by, what are we talking, 6 seconds? Like, it's mind-blowing, mate. Like, it really is. And it's also worth noting, like, I've been a little bit critical, I think, of Beth Potter this year, saying that, apart from the arena games and stuff, she seemed quite soft. Second place, mate. She's definitely really starting to come into form.
Yeah, exactly. Her momentum is really, really picking up, and it's good to see because, I like to see people coming into triathlon and actually achieving what they're looking to achieve. And she's edging towards that. And that's great.
Exactly. All right. Well, the next one, we are staying in Hamburg. We're staying with John Levinson. We're going to go to the men's. The swim leader, Mark DeVay from Hungary, was the first to reach the turn point in less than 3 minutes. And then things appeared to get a little physical midway through the pack. Vincent Louis moved his way to the front of the pack as T1 approached, while behind, despite huge signs and kayaks, a few athletes seemed intent on going the wrong way and missing the correct entrance to the tunnel. At the exit ramp, it was Vincent Louis, Morlec, and DeVay leading the way with Mr. Consistent Leo Berger just 10 seconds back. The shepherdess himself.
Shepherdess himself.
Onto the bike, an initial push on the bike from Louis and Molek was soon extinguished, and come the end of lap 1 of 6, we had 37 athletes cross the time within 13 seconds, broadly split it into 2 groups, with Wilde and Gaines among them. Great Britain's Sam Dickinson was one of the first off the bike, and while Gaines had a great T2, Wilde was rather sluggish and would have lost a lot of places to make up to continue his impressive 22 form. Onto the run, Barclay Izzard from Great Britain was also fabulous in T2 and bravely took the race on in the early stages before we saw Berger take over. After initial concerns over Wilde's T2 could seemingly be forgotten when, much like Flora Duffy earlier, he glided from well down the field up to leading trio inside the first 2.5k, at which point the leading quartet was Wilde, Madhauser, Berger and Gaines. The Belgians seemed to blow significantly starting the second and final lap as Wilde increased the pace, while Wilde pulled away from Hauser at the front to continue with the form and favourite status we gave him pre-race. And no year today, but their showdown at the Com Games in 3 weeks' time is something to really look forward to. Different class today. So first place, Hayden Wilde, 53.10. Second place, Matt Hauser, 53.13. And third place, Jawad Abdul Mullah from MAR. Is MAR Morocco? Or where's MAR?
Not sure.
53.26.
Maybe.
Marrakesh, maybe. Yellow Gaines, Leo Berger in fourth. But, mate, Hayden Wilde, red hot.
Yeah, good work, Haydo. I messaged him afterwards and said congratulations. Great to see it coming together. Want to see him beat Yee. I want to see a Hayden Wilde Yee race and want Hayden to take him out. So great to see Wilde performing like this. But the Com Games can't come soon enough for that men's race because it's going to be scintillating, mate. And
Morocco. It is Morocco.
Oh, okay. I back Haydo. I back Haydo for the Com Games.
You see, I love you, Hayden Wilde. I've said it. If Alex Yee was there, I really think Alex is just, because I've said this so much time this year. It's a bike pack on. It's a bike pack on the bike, so it's boring.
We're not seeing any escapes on the bike, are we?
We're not seeing any escapes on the bike, and then it's a runner's race. Hayden Wilde wins because Hayden's the best runner in the field outside of Alex Yee. Alex Yee is there. Alex would have gone with Hayden. I mean, what did Hayden ran, like a 14:04 or something? Fucking insane like that. Like I think I saw in Brad Culp's weekly roundup, he said he thinks it's possibly the fastest 5K ever run in World Triathlon. I don't know that. I don't know if that statistic's correct. I just feel like, yeah, if Yee was there, he probably would have let Hayden set the pace, and then with a couple of with a K to go, he would have just gone kaboom, I'm out of here, sort of thing.
Yeah. And we've got Hayden Wilde leading the championships on 3,850 with Leo Berger second, Yellow Gaines third, Vasco Velasa fourth, and Vince Louis in fifth. Ominous that Alex Yee isn't on that list, because he's just doing exactly what British Triathlon tend to do, which is pick his races that will get him in shape for the Com Games to win that medal, because it's a medal factory. He's not interested in the WTCS Championship this year. He's interested in the Commonwealth Games gold. So it's ominous. It's ominous, really.
It means
like
I said
just tracking you in the water, mate, and it'll pop up and eat your face off.
I was quite vocal a few weeks ago saying that I can't see anybody beating Alex for this, and Hayden Wilde could very well win the World Triathlon. He could be a world champion at the end of this season. In fact, looking at these points,
it could well be. But if Alex Yee gets the Commonwealth gold and Hayden comes away with the silver, which one carries the kudos?
What do you think? What do you think is more important?
I think, in terms of looking at record sheets when all is said and done, having a Commonwealth gold, for my mind, ranks higher than a WTCS championship. Certainly in a year when there was a Commonwealth Games.
Interesting. I would actually think that, to me, I'd say a world title is probably a bigger deal than the Com Games. I think.
No, I think silverware is everything, mate.
No, fair. I like that we don't always agree on things. It's interesting. I didn't realize that Alexi's not even on there, mate. He's like,
no.
I have to go and do some research, because I thought he's won a few races, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's just lurking, mate. He's won picking races that will get him in the best shape for the Com Games, because Brit Tri is all over that shit. They just want medals.
Is it true that there's no more World Triathlon racing now until September or something?
Not sure. I'd have to look at the calendar.
Who told me that? Somebody told me that. I think. Anyway, doesn't matter. Also means Super League's getting closer. I heard from it. I heard a little bird told me that apparently a lot of Super League are actually struggling to get athletes to commit to a full season this year. because Olympic points are starting. You've got the grand final. Like, there's a lot of moving parts. So apparently a lot of athletes aren't going to race the entire Super League series. So that's also interesting to see that we've talked a lot about how we seem to think that a lot of athletes are starting to go, no, Super League is a big deal for me now. And then we also hear, but they're actually struggling to fill their ranks a little bit at the moment. So it's interesting. Lots happening in short course racing at the moment. It's a good time to be a fan of. I did watch. Which race did I watch? I watched one of the replays the other day on the bike. It was good. It's good racing. So, and plenty more to come. James Bale. Some races that I haven't followed though, but are worth mentioning. We're going to go through now. Still with Jonathan Turner actually this time from Tri 24/7. We're going to start with IronMan Switzerland. Swiss superstar Danila Reef produced another completely dominant performance in front of her home fans at IronMan Switzerland. The current Ironman World Champion had won the event 3 times previously, 2014, 16, and 2021, with the last of those wins the first time it had been held at the new venue, which is within an hour of her home. Last time she won by 36 minutes, and last weekend's triumph threatened to exceed that before the gap stabilised to just under half an hour on the run. Reef crossing the line in 59.05. Reef was first out of the water with a 51.20, which gave her a lead of over 5 minutes over Tara Grosvenor. That pair left T1 locked together, but the gap, and Nina Deron. That pair left T1 locked together, but the gap between them and Reef was soon extended further. Through the stunning Swiss countryside, Reef underlined her class on the bike to ride the opposition ragged. Before the halfway point, the advantage had moved into double figures, with Deron her closest challenger at that point. Deron was joined by Finland's Heini Hartikainen in the closing stages on the bike, but now the gap had ballooned to just under half an hour. The splendid isolation for Reef continued with an advantage of over 6 kilometres by the Hartikainen and Deron had reached by the time they'd reached T2. In behind, there was a far closer battle for 2 podium positions. Hartikainen was in second until the 25-kilometre mark, at which point she was overhauled by Belgium's Alexandra Tonda. So first place, Danila Reef, 8:59.05. Second place, Alexandra Tonda, 9:25.57. So a massive 26 minutes behind. And third place, Heini Hartikainen, 9:27.01. That's a massive domination, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, Reef is just like we were saying about Duffy. She's pretty good at this stuff, and it's good to see that the upswing we saw earlier in the year when we were at St George is continuing, because she is not very old, and I hope she's got a lot more to give to the sport and a lot more championships to win. And I would very much like to see her go well in Kona later in the year. So, well done, Daniela. It's all moving in the right direction still, and it's good to see.
I'm so excited now for that battle in Kona between Daniela Reef, Laura Philipp, and Anne Haug. Like that, those three, I think. Like, I can't wait to see that battle for those three unfold, because it's going to be what Anne did in Roth the other day.
They're definitely the three, aren't they?
Yeah,
without question.
No, it's good, mate. It is. Again, I'm starting to get like that excitement about Kona, and I saw an article. I was going through there's only, I think, a few more races left to confirm the Kona slots. And it's looking through those lists. There's I think these races are going to be pretty fire, to be honest. It's looking good, but fingers crossed we keep seeing Daniela Reef doing what she does best. But yeah, we'll see. The other race that happened over the weekend, mate, that I wanted to talk about, a little bit different to the women's the Swiss race where Daniela dominated so badly. This was Ironman Vitoria-Gasteiz, which is a Spanish Ironman race. Again, Jonathan Turner. With very few opportunities left to join the qualified, this is what I was just talking about, there were 2 significant carrots at stake. And Worth looked to have put himself in a pole position for one of those when a stunning bike leg gave him an advantage of almost 10 minutes starting the run. But there was drama aplenty to come, and it was Nick Castellan, who last year returned from a pelvic fracture and broken ribs, who had the final say once he moved into the lead with just 5 kilometres remaining in the marathon. The swim saw a group of 4 establish an early lead of 1 minute 40. It was in fact Castellan who was out of the water first, just ahead of Sweden's Patrick Nilsson and Spaniards Peru Alfaro and Emilio Agoyo Munez. 2.5 minutes back was Worth. It was no surprise to see pro cyclist Worth, who helped his Ineos Grandiers team win Paris-Roubaix earlier this season, put his rivals to the sword on the bike leg, powering to a lead after just 25 kilometres. But the manner was again hugely impressive, and his split of 4:01.33 was nearly 10 minutes faster than the next best of Tobias Dahl Thompson from Denmark, who was closest to him at T2, 9.5 minutes down. Castellan at this point had dropped out of the top 10 13 minutes down. And so to the run, and ahead of the race, Worth had admitted, this has been an uncertain year of preparation as I've been very involved in cycling and I've not been able to train as much for the run and swim. But setting out into the marathon all seemed on track, with his first 10 kilometres 2 seconds under the 40-minute mark. But it was from that point onwards, as the temperature soared, that the gap tumbled, down to less than 4 minutes by the 18-kilometre point, with Munoz looking by far the biggest danger. Worth was walking through the aid stations to take on hydration and nutrition, a policy which helped stabilise things and get through. And though the lead was still fragile, Worth regained his rhythm and refused to relinquish his advantage. Munoz got to within seconds just before the fourth and final lap, but Worth held him firm, and the Spaniard was suddenly seemingly struggling with the onset of cramp. The next twist saw Munoz reduced to a walk and overtaken for second by Castellan, who had been running quicker than anyone. And that continued as the Aussie, now based in Girona, reaped the benefits of building up for this race by doing 2-hour training runs in the heat of the day. He finally made the catch with around 5 kilometres remaining, and this time Worth had no answer. Castellan clocking a clear best of the day 2:43.28 marathon, but Worth had managed his resources superbly. His marathon time was 2:57.43 to hold on to the valuable runner-up spot. So in first place, Nick Castellan, 7:52.50. Second place, Cam Worth, 7:53.29. Third place, Dominic Soieja, 7:54.21. Mate, to come up over 10 minutes down and win the race is pretty impressive from Nick Castellan.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? It's, if someone says Cameron Worth's getting off the bike 10 minutes ahead of everybody, you expect him at least to be able to run a marathon that's good enough to take that victory. But, running a 2:57.43, fair play, Cam, but, good work for Nick Castellan. That's a hell of a performance. Frodo's training partner, eh?
Yeah, he was, I think. I don't know. I know it's, I don't know, but... Yeah, I saw the moment that I've watched the video of when Nick passed Cam, and man, he left him like it looked like Cam was standing still. Like the difference in speed between those two was significant. But
I haven't seen that, but it's he ran a lot quicker marathon than him, didn't he?
Significantly. That's Again, it's not all about the bike, I guess.
It's not all about the bike, mate. No.
One last thing, James Bell, before we move on to the next part of the show, and I just wanted to touch on this quickly. I saw that Tim Orio Try Today put up this summary, but the PTO have announced some more of the wild cards that are going to be racing the Edmonton Tour, which I think is next weekend. I don't think it's definitely not this weekend. I think it's next weekend. So the women's field now features 18 of the world's top 25 PTO world-ranked female triathletes, one of the strongest lineups of the season. So they've added the additional names of Nicola Spirig, Sophie Watts, Victoria Lopez, Radka Carterfelt, Rach McBride, Grace Theck, Penny Slater, and India Lee from Great Britain. In the men's, they've added Henry Schumann, Matt McElroy, Andre Lopez, Carl Buckingham, Max Newman, Brent McMahon, Ronaldo Colucci, Steve McKenna, Peter Heinrich, Matt Sharp, and Yuri Kulin. So there's some pretty good names that are coming to this. What's already a very impressive start list, mate, they've got some real firepower in there now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see that they're going down the wildcard route and adding in some, what a wildcard allows you to do is not just rely on the rankings themselves to dictate who's going to be there or even invitations, but to kind of create a who's relevant in that moment, choice, so that it adds a bit more interest for the audience, because you can look at the lay of the land around triathlon and say, well, actually that person there may not be in a position where they get an invitation to Edmonton, but we can bring them along for a bit of spice, and spice is
Nicola
what we've got.
Mate.
Yeah, Nicola Spirig is. Yeah, she's pretty incredible, isn't she?
She's sub 8. Yeah, I'm like really keen to see off the back of sub 8. Her back down to this shorter distance. We know that she's very, 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 very good at Olympic distance racing and 70.3. This has been slightly shorter. I'm excited to see it. And then Henry Schumann. Henry has had a rough year, I suppose, obviously getting injured at the Olympics. Again, similar to Nicola, very, very good at that short distance racing. And we're starting to see Henry dabble with the longer stuff, coming up to that sort of between Olympic and 70.3 distance as his return race. I'm really excited to see where Henry's at as well. And then, Steve McKenna, an Aussie that I really rate. Brent McMahon, he's been doing it for years and years. He's always a guy that really flies under the radar, but it's red hot. Matt Sharp, who we've seen sort of retire from short course racing, start to commit to the longer stuff, has done quite well this year. So there's some real names there, mate. I'm really excited about this race.
Yeah, I am as well. I think it would be good to see. I'm excited to see what the broadcast package looks like as well, because
Well, let's talk about broadcast in the
there
next
you go.
part of the show.
Segue that right up. Welcome to the down low on the PTO. So the
You
PTO have
nailed it,
agreed.
mate.
Yeah, I know. The PTO have agreed a multi-year broadcast deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. The Professional Triathletes Organisation has announced a major broadcast partnership as it prepares for an eagerly awaited Canadian Open later this month. A multi-year partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery, announced on Wednesday, includes live and on-demand coverage of the new PTO Tour, which starts with that Edmonton showpiece on the July 23rd, 24th. The agreement will see exclusive live coverage in 50 territories across Europe on linear channels and streamed via Discovery Plus, the Eurosport app, and GCN. Plus, what's included in the deal? Highlights of the new partnership include PTO Tour events broadcast exclusively live and on demand in Europe on Eurosport linear channels and streaming via Discovery Plus and Eurosport app, as well as non-exclusively in Asia and exclusively across the Indian subcontinent. PTO Tour events will benefit from Warner Brothers Discovery's global scale and local delivery, with each live broadcast delivered with localized commentary in 20 languages. Tapping
Wow.
into the home of cycling via the passionate cycling audience engaged by the Global Cycling Network, GCN, globally and through their popular triathlon outlet, Global Triathlon Network, GTN, amplified PTO triathletes and PTO Tour events on Eurosport.com, which engages more than 50 million people each month, through the creation of a dedicated triathlon section alongside news and feature articles and near live clips across social media. Broadcasts of shoulder programming, including linear countdown shows and athlete short form features, on demand race highlights featuring the best moments of each event. So this in my mind, mate, is quite big. We're suddenly
It's
seeing
huge.
this PTO come out from their own sort of streaming, get it on the website, pay some money if you want, but we won't really tell you that you don't have to, but you can just sort of pay it, or but you can watch it for free if you
Yep.
register. Um, this is actually a serious player in the business saying, right, we're going to sign a multi-year deal with you, and we're going to cover a lot of stuff to come, and we're putting it out there. So good luck to them, man.
Mate, the big thing that really stands out to me there is the fact that it's going to be localized with 20 different languages doing commentary for the event. Like, that's huge. Like, we
Yeah.
talk about barriers to a sport, and a lot of the world doesn't speak English. So suddenly being able to, even if you do speak English, you don't always necessarily want to watch sport. Like, I can speak Norwegian, but I don't always like watching things in Norwegian because I don't want to be thinking. Like, I think as English speakers, we sometimes forget that even though people can speak English, it can still become exhausting. So being able to watch this in your native language and actually just enjoy it without having to think, that's going to take away so many barriers for people as well. Like, that's a real big one for me. And I mean, Warner Brothers Discovery, we're talking about one of the biggest entertainment entities in the world. Like,
Yeah.
this is they're not fucking about here, mate. This is a big move, and we hear this all the time. We always hear about, oh, this race is going to have the X broadcast, Y broadcast, and it never is. It never
No,
is what it says it is.
it never is.
This
No.
is this seems pretty fucking legit to me, mate.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
obviously the proof will be in the pudding. We
yeah.
don't want to over egg the pudding before we get to eating it. But I do.
There's always room for pud, mate.
I do like. I do like this because it looks big, and our sport deserves big, mate. It deserves to have a place amongst some of the best televised sport in the world. I mean, when you're on the GCN app and you're watching the Tour de France, you're getting really high quality coverage of the racing, and I want to see that. I want to see races like this next to that in terms of race experience, broadcast footage, drone footage. I want it to be the package.
Yeah, I agree. Mate, I hadn't seen this until you put in the doc, actually. So this almost caught me a little bit off surprise, and I'm pretty happy about this. So it's good. Let's see what they do, mate. I'm genuinely keen. I hope it's a massive success. So
Yeah, indeed. I mean, when
you know
you
what?
messaged me this morning and said, "Have we talked about the wild cards yet for Edmonton?" I thought we were about to have an argument about what should be in the down low and the PTO, because I was like, "No, mate,
Nah,
this is more important.
I
This is
saw
more
this and thought
important
we're
than that."
definitely putting this in. This is
Uh,
this is big. So this is what it's meant to highlight the good stuff they're doing, and this I think is very very good. Just like if you want to talk about good stuff and you like this podcast and you want more good stuff, you head to mxendurance.com/podcast. You can sign up for one of our podcast memberships. We have monthly, quarterly, and annual options. Prices start as little as $3.40 a month. gets you bonus content, gets you partner discounts, gets you access to our community, our WhatsApp group, our Facebook group. We have a Discord channel. You can join the Discord channel even if you're not a member, even if you just want to talk triathlon, even if you want to tell us we're idiots, or you want to say, James Bale, Law, whatever your nickname is at this point, why do they call you the Shepherdess? Whatever it is, you can join. Just shoot us a memo, whatever it is. But if you want the extra stuff, you want the good stuff, you want to support us doing this podcast, mxendurance.com/podcast. We'd love to have you. You get a free hat, all this other stuff. James, if they want to find out other things about the aforementioned MX Endurance, where do they need to go?
If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at tford14 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review. You can do it in the podcast app, and it really helps the show out. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow. And if you've got any comments, suggestions, criticisms, send an email to podcast@mxendurance.com.
Perfect. James Bale, a pleasure as always. Guys, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. I guess we're going to preview the PTO Tour in Edmonton, mate.
Sounds like it, mate, doesn't it? Cheerio.
Too easy. Cheers, guys. Bye.